What's happening, guys? Sam Adams here, and welcome to a brand new episode of Caffeinate today for May the 14th of 2019. My name is Samuel Adams, and welcome to today's show. Of course, as always, I do hope this one finds you well, and if you are brand new to the show, this is a daily gaming news podcast where I let you guys know what is happening in the gaming industry. And today we have a new king, or at least the ESA has a brand new CEO. Of course, if you've been following the show for a couple of weeks, you'll know this is a very significant move because Variety came out with a big report. We'll dive into it here in a moment. But on top of that, today we have more talk about Epic Game Store exclusives because some of that is still happening, believe it or not. I know it's insane. On top of that, Epic Games has acquired Twinmotion. Starbreeze admits that it lacks sufficient funds for the coming 12 months. Now, this is a story all about how my life got twisted upside down. No, I'm just kidding. This is a story that came out a couple of days back, so I wanted to go ahead and touch on it because, to be quite honest with you, I didn't know if there was going to be a follow-up story in the coming days after its initial reveal. So I wanted to give it a couple of days. Grand Theft Auto 5 has sold 110 million copies, and we have more figures of that style of nature from Take-Two. Oddworld, Soulstorm has a brand new trailer, and Gears 5 release date could have leaked, but we know what the box art looks like, and it's all but official. And that is pretty much our lineup for the day. Now again, if you happen to be brand new here, this is hosted 5 days a week, Monday through Friday on twitch.tv/The Samuel Adams live at 7 a.m. Eastern Time if you did want to check it out. Now, on top of that, I then take the show down and put it up on youtube.com/Samuel Adams Media, as well as podcast services around the world, thanks to Anchor.fm, including Spotify, if you did want to get it on Spotify, along with pretty much every other place that you would ever find a podcast, at least, you know. You might be one of those guys that uses a very strange, totally fine. Whatever works for you, man. Whatever works for you. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's top stories. Entertainment Software Association announces Stanley Pierre-Louis as the next CEO. The Entertainment Software Association, the game industry's lobbying group and the creator of the big E3 trade show, has named Stanley Pierre-Louis as its new president and CEO. Pierre-Louis stepped up last fall as the acting CEO after the departure of longtime CEO Mike Gallagher. Now he has been named as the permanent CEO of the body, which represents the $43.4 billion U.S. video game industry. The ESA made the announcement at a time when more than 164 million adults in the United States play video games, and 3/4 of all Americans have at least one video game player in their household. In my household, I am that. Pierre-Louis spoke at our recent Games Beat Summit 2019 event, they say on VentureBeat, in April, and a fireside chat with Keisha Howard on screen time and video game addiction. The ESA said it sought an executive with deep experience in entertainment, law, and policy to lead the industry into its next chapter. Pierre-Louis joined the ESA as its general counsel in May 2015. Pierre-Louis is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Clark University. He earned his law degree from the University of Chicago Law School, where he also served on the University of Chicago Law Review's Board of Editors. Following law school, he clerked for Judge David A. Nelson of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. Pierre-Louis served previously on several boards, including on the University of Chicago's Alumni Board of Governors, the Law School's Visiting Committee, the Washington Area Lawyers for the Arts, and the Lincoln Center Education, and the educational arm of the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. Of course, they go very in-depth into his background if you did want to do more research on Pierre-Louis, but Stan's strategic vision, years of entertainment experience, and policy expertise make him the ideal choice to lead our industry through this period of growth and opportunity, said Robert Altman, chairman of the ESA board and chairman and CEO of ZeniMax Media, parent company of game publisher Bethesda Softworks, in a statement. The board and the industry look forward to his leadership of the ESA. Now, of course, he has been in the gaming industry for a while, specifically in this role as CEO since last fall, and so it's interesting to see him kind of stepping up and just fulfilling it completely and just going ahead and signing that paper, so to speak. So I think this is a good choice. Of course, as this article does say, the ESA is a big kind of behind-the-scenes factor in the modern gaming industry because it's essentially the branch between the government and the gaming industry. And in a way, it kind of is the glue that holds the entire thing together, again, organizing stuff like E3. I did a little bit of research a couple of days back, so my memory might be a little bit fuzzy on this because I was just kind of bored and wanted to learn more about it. But essentially, whenever video games began to be part of the limelight of discussion around censorship, censorship of what is appropriate for kids to play, the impacts of violence in video games, and how that can change people's minds and the way that kids perceive the world, they were pretty much given an option. So you could either be regulated by the U.S. government, or there could be self-regulation set up, which is pretty much where the ESRB came from. And in that same kind of vein, you get the ESA, which I believe was originally the Video Game Industry Association, something along those lines. But again, tons of information on this subject online if you do want to do more research on it. And I could have missed a couple of points there, but you get the idea. This is pretty much the governing body of the video game, industry. That's basically what it is. And so to have somebody who has experience in a lot of different areas at the helm is very imperative. And so it sounds like Stanley Pierre-Louis actually does have this wide swath of experience. And of course, there's a phenomenal Q&A kind of situation with him on the official VentureBeat YouTube. I would highly encourage you to check it out. A very knowledgeable individual who is great at public speaking and is a very good representative of the gaming industry, in my opinion. So, if you did wonder what was going on behind the scenes at the ESA, this appears to be a step in the right direction. Of course, a couple of weeks back, there was a Variety article published by, I believe it was Brian Crescenti, who wrote about this entire just disarray behind the scenes at the ESA. Of course, E3 itself is beginning to kind of break at the seams, so to speak. It's not quite performing in the way that it has in years past, because there really is no need to have an industry-wide trade show in an era where the internet allows for constant and up-to-the-second communication. And so whenever you have a shifting industry, you begin to have a shifting association behind the industry, which is where we see the ESA today. So hopefully Stanley Pierre-Louis can hold it together, can drive into the next generation of the ESA, and figure out what exactly this association needs to do to remain relevant and to remain effective. I think that's really what it comes down to. Any association that has any kind of weight being thrown around in an industry needs to remain effective in times of change, and that is where the industry finds itself today. But with that being said, now that I've updated you guys on the new president CEO, let's talk about the Epic Game Store exclusives yet again, because this just keeps on coming. Outer Wilds is now an Epic Game Store exclusive, and backers are not happy. I talk about this story because this one has a different skew than any of the ones that I've talked about previously. Mobius Digital's open world exploration game Outer Wilds will be a timed exclusive on the Epic Game Store when it launches, the developer revealed in an update last Friday. Additional platforms are coming later, Mobius Digital said. Rest assured, we read all of your comments, and our goal is to bring the game to your preferred platform as quickly as possible. We will keep you up to date with the latest info here. Throughout the development of the game, we have welcomed helpful partnerships with Annapurna Interactive, Xbox, and Epic to support us and keep our small studio running long enough to ship the game at the level of quality that it is today, the studio added. Each of these partnerships has enabled us to make the game better and more accessible for everyone who will play it. Outer Wilds, not to be confused with Obsidian Entertainment's upcoming role-playing game, The Outer Worlds, which is also an Epic Game Store exclusive, was crowdfunded on gaming-centric platform Fig. Some backers are not happy with the title's timed exclusivity and see the move as a betrayal of their trust. That is deeply disappointing, said backer Jesse C. If the delay for a Steam release of more than a few months, I think I'll have to seek a refund. Gotta love comments. I have not been happy about past Epic Store exclusives due to the typical reasons. A huge lack of features compared to Steam, splitting my library, but it didn't bother me too much because I could simply choose not to purchase these games, thereby voting with my dollar and not supporting a company I didn't like, said backer at the ground below. Now this, I am furious. Say goodbye to any remaining goodwill you had for me. Pulling this bait and switch at the last moment after 4 years of development and my money long gone is not kosher. The Epic Game Store launched in December of 2018 and quickly established itself as a serious competitor to Valve's digital storefront Steam. Its rising popularity is mainly due to its 88%, 12% revenue share model with developers and its aggressive approach to acquiring exclusives of both AAA and indie titles like Outer Wilds, and The Outer Worlds, Borderlands 3, Tom Clancy's The Division 2, and Metro Exodus. And so we have yet another game that has been poached according to the giant mob that is beginning to form. But this one is a bit different, as I said, as compared to any of these instances that I've reported on before, because This is a game that has been backed. So this changes things. Whenever you are throwing your money behind a project, you expect it to be available on something. So in my opinion, and again, this is debatable, a lot of people have different takes on this, if you are going to be putting your money behind something, I need to be able to know where that is going to be. So if the game is put up on any kind of backing platform, whether it be, Fig or another one, I need to know that it's going to be on PS4, Xbox One, PC, and I need to know which version of that I'm going to be getting. So if it is on PC, I need to know where. And that's a bit of a change as compared to the past. We haven't necessarily had to make that discretion before because everybody just assumed that it would be on Steam because that was pretty much where it would go. There weren't too many other options. That's just kind of what happened. So now, with the Epic Game Store beginning to get a lot of these indie games, because again, the revenue split is unable to be matched by anything else on the PC space or in the gaming industry overall, that's whenever you need to start making it known that, hey, this is coming to PC, but it's not going to be on Steam. Now, with that being said, this game has been in development for 4 years. The industry has shifted greatly in 4 years. If you look back to 2015 and you compare that version of the industry to what we have today, they are two nearly completely different things. It is a very different space right now. Battle Royale wasn't even known 4 years ago. It was there in games that were lesser known and lesser popular as compared to stuff like Fortnite and PUBG, but nothing in the way that we have today. Epic was largely unknown as well. Of course, they were known primarily for games that had come out in the past, but nothing was really percolating at that specific time. Of course, a couple of games came out here and there, but I digress. This isn't a history of Epic. This is saying that whenever you have a game developing over the course of a time, you have to take into account that if you make changes at the last minute, people are going to be upset, and they probably aren't the best moves, especially when you're trying to prove yourself as a company and trying to prove your game is worthy of somebody's attention. So is this the right move? For the developers and the company, yes. For the people that are actually backing the game and wanting to play it on PC, probably not, if I'm being honest with you. Again, I'm somebody who is staunchly for the Epic Game Store. I have no problem with it. I don't think it's going to be disruptive in a bad way. I think it's going to be disruptive in a good way to break up this giant monopoly that Steam has over the PC gaming space. Not only that, indie developers and developers overall get more money to put back towards their games and to generally just make a better industry. That it's great, it's fine, it's good. But again, some people have different takes on that. So if you were going to be picking up Outer Wilds on PC, then just know it's going to be now an Epic Game Store exclusive, at least for a while. Coming to Steam in the future, to make it very clear, but for a while, only available on the Epic Game Store. But looks like a pretty cool game, actually. I've never heard of this. I've heard of it in passing, but I have never given it a deep look. However, now I probably will. But let's talk about Epic Games, because they have now acquired Twinmotion. And I talk about this story because this shows the power of Epic Games outside of the gaming space. So, Epic Games this week announced the acquisition of visualization tool Twinmotion for an undisclosed amount. Originally developed by Advent, Twinmotion is a visualization toolkit used for architecture, construction, urban planning, and landscaping. The deal sees Epic Games add Twinmotion to its ever-growing suite of toolsets for Unreal Engine 4, as seen with the acquisition of Agog Labs and 3Lateral earlier this year. According to a statement, Epic Games' new version of Twinmotion promises improved performance, enhanced direct synchronization with Revit and ArchiCAD, and a new global illumination glow effects. Twinmotion will be free to download and use until November of 2019. This version will remain free forever with no royalties and no strings attached. Additional pricing will be announced at a later date. Since launching our Unreal Studio beta in March 2018, we have seen particular demand in the architecture, engineering, and construction space, said Unreal Engine General Manager Mark Pettit. We are thrilled to continue building Twinmotion to make high-end visualization even more accessible to the global architecture community. And so, this shows just how big Epic is actually in today's day and age. It's not just about gaming. Of course, people see Epic now and they think Fortnite. No, Epic is across a variety of industries, and the acquisition of Twinmotion just makes that even larger. So I think it's a pretty good acquisition. Of course, Epic has a lot of resources, both monetary and otherwise. They can really push this kind of tech to new limits. So, of course, in the architecture and engineering and construction space, this is going to be a big tool when it goes into planning and developing big new buildings that you are going to be seeing in a town near you sometime in the next few years. But I wanted to mention it because, again, I like to point out that gaming isn't just restricted to walking into a GameStop and all of the games that you see there. That's not what gaming is. Now, gaming is something that has an impact on every little small niche in society, including those as big as the engineering and construction and design architecture spaces. It's crazy how big the reach is actually getting. However, although Epic might have enough money to buy a brand new company, Starbreeze does not, because Starbreeze says it lacks sufficient funds for the coming 12 months. Troubled video game developer and publisher Starbreeze Studios currently lacks sufficient secured funds to continue operating for the coming 12 months, it admitted in a recent financial report for the first fiscal quarter of 2019. The studio expects a liquidity shortfall before mid-2019 if it can't get additional funding, it added. A number of costly failures and general mismanagement reportedly led Starbreeze's financial troubles. It filed for reconstruction on December 5th after low sales of its co-op action games Overkill's The Walking Dead. That reconstruction was extended through June the 3rd by order of the Stockholm District Court. Skybound, which owns the rights to The Walking Dead, terminated its license agreement with Starbreeze, forcing the publisher to pull the game from Steam. If the two companies don't come to a resolution, the title won't be listed for sale again and planned console versions will not be released. A few days after it filed for reconstruction, authorities raided Starbreeze's offices and arrested two people as part of an investigation into alleged insider trading. Its former CEO, Bo Anderson Klint, was later cleared in that investigation, and the Swedish Economic Crime Authority turned its gaze towards Carnegie Investment Bank, which sold Klint's shares in the company. Acting CEO Michael Nurmark said his main task now is to secure financing for the company's future operations. This involves both long-term financing we can use to build the Starbreeze of the future, but also making sure that the assets we have determined are unrelated to the core business are managed in a commercially viable way. Once this financing has been secured, we will be able to look ahead and present a more detailed strategy for the future, he said. Starbreeze reported net sales of SEK 47.8 million for the first quarter of 2019. Its online co-op game Payday accounted for about 26.7 million of that. The company saw no revenues for its asymmetrical horror title Dead by Daylight during the quarter. It also sold the publishing rights to System Shock 3 during that time, generating initial revenue of 3.7 million. Overall, Starbreeze reported a loss before tax of 167.3 million. That is a lot of bread, my friends. Starbreeze is not doing so hot as of right now. Again, I think that you can point your finger at a lot of different things here, but Overkill's The Walking Dead sucked resources dry. I mean, truly, the game itself did not pan out. It did not look good. It did not play well. It just was not the game that people were hoping it was. And so, of course, it was such a big disappointment that they ended up pulling it from Steam, and the console versions are still up in the air. All of that development, all of that money, is just completely and totally in limbo right now because nobody knows if the game will ever come out again or not, and if it does, will anybody actually buy it? Probably not. So now, how do you move forward? Of course, Payday is a fine game. It's a game that has had a huge following for years and years, but is it still viable to continue leaning on that in 2019? How many more copies of Payday 2 are you going to be able to sell this late in the game? Of course, there has already been a remaster, a re-release. What else can you do aside from develop Payday 3? Which I would hope is already in development. However, how far along is that? You know, how much more money do you need to make Payday 3 a reality? Because that would be a fantastic selling game, assuming that it is of a good quality, and so that would probably be the move to make. But again, is it feasible? Probably not. So in the current state, Starbreeze does not look like it has a very bright future. I wouldn't be shocked to see it close, and I hate to be the one to make that statement, but still, it just doesn't seem to have a good outcome here. I will say that there has been a company bought from Starbreeze. It's an Indian developer, and I believe it was bought by Take-Two, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, I think. We might not be talking about it, but essentially an Indian publisher, or an Indian game development studio, has been purchased by Take-Two to work directly with guys over there on the other teams. I think it's Rockstar. Let's look it up. Starbreeze. Sorry. This is whenever you have an idea in your mind. Here we go. Fantastic. GamesIndustry.biz. We'll go ahead and just roll right into this. Rockstar acquires Druva Interactive from Starbreeze for $7.9 million. The Indian art production studio joins Red Dead Redemption publisher as Starbreeze continues to struggle. And so, I will read through this here in just a moment, or perhaps we won't. But essentially, they have already sold one of their development studios that they acquired for $8.5 million a couple of years back for $7.9 million to Rockstar. And so now the people at Druva are going to be working with Rockstar along with other projects they already had on the table. And so now you have $7.9 million to work with. It's a bit. It'll keep it going for a while. Again, as compared to the 167.3 SEK. I don't know what that is. Hold on. Let's search that. Wow. That's not a lot of money to USD. This is a weird. I'm doing conversions, so we need to have 167.3. What? That's not that can't be right. Regardless, not a lot of money is coming in, a lot of money is going out. I'm really good at numbers here today, folks. But if you were curious as to what was happening behind the scenes at Starbreeze, not a lot, and not a lot is looking good for them. But let's move on to talk about Grand Theft Auto 5, and along with a couple of other games under the Take-Two umbrella, because Take-Two Interactive is currently firing on all cylinders from Red Dead Redemption 2 to the NBA 2K series to Grand Theft Auto 5, which has now sold 110 million copies. This figure was dropped during the company's fiscal 2019 earnings call, during which it was also mentioned that the Borderlands series has sold over 43 million units, and that 20 million of those were Borderlands 2 alone. Other sales highlights included a positive word in for Civilization 6, which outperformed Take-Two expectations last year due to popularity on the Nintendo Switch. The company is also expecting NBA 2K19 to be the best performing game in the series in time. Alongside these successes and its plans for a busy year headlined by Borderlands 3, CEO Strauss Zelnick also mentioned that the company is looking to mobile to increase its IP presence in the future. Its subsidiary Social Point is currently working on 10 new games, and the company plans to bring its current franchise and major IP to mobile through companion apps, spin-offs, and eventually full games as well. Finally, Take-Two confirmed that it has other unannounced games in the works for the coming fiscal year to help meet its revenue targets of between $2.7 and $2.8 billion, in addition to its announced offerings of Borderlands 3, The Outer Worlds, NBA 2K20, WWE 2K20, and Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey. And so, as it stands right now, Take-Two is in a really good spot. I mean, they are just getting a little bit of everything. You've got sports, you've got Red Dead, you've got Borderlands. It is nutty how much weight they throw around. But again, the big figure here, 110 million copies of Grand Theft Auto 5, this game just doesn't stop. It's kind of like the generic game where it's like, what do you think of a video game as? I think about Grand Theft Auto 5 and Call of Duty. They are two games that just keep on going. It doesn't matter what happens for these franchises, they are always going to be around, in my opinion. So, of course, I'm sure that we have development going on the next Grand Theft Auto. Of course, it won't be out until next gen at the earliest, of course, even probably halfway through it. Why would you even think about releasing it whenever Grand Theft Auto 5 is still selling like hotcakes? So we will see what the future of Grand Theft Auto holds, but Borderlands doing phenomenally well, Grand Theft Auto doing phenomenally well, Take-Two Interactive overall doing phenomenally well. You can't even deny it one single bit. But we do have a brand new trailer for Oddworld Soulstorm because this is a pretty cool looking game, I must admit. And of course, the trailer itself includes a first glimpse of in-game footage. A first peek at Oddworld Soulstorm gameplay has finally been revealed. A follow-up to Oddworld New and Tasty, Soulstorm was announced way back in 2016, and yet details about the game have remained rather scarce. Well, the latest Soulstorm trailer actually shows the title in action, and well, it looks like an Oddworld game. Not that I'm complaining, the author says. The Oddworld games are still some of the best and most unique puzzle platformers of all time, and you can check out the trailer down below. Now, for those that have not been following the game, Oddworld Soulstorm is not a straight remake, despite being a follow-up to Oddworld New and Tasty, a remake of Abe's Odyssey. The creators of Oddworld originally wanted to tell a single cohesive story over 5 games, the Oddworld Quintology, but their vision was never realized. Soulstorm is the second chapter in the story the developers always wanted to tell, although it seems to also take notes from the original second game in the series, Abe's Exodus. According to the trailer and new previews making the rounds, Soulstorm will also feature a new crafting element, And so, we have the first look at Oddworld Soulstorm, and I must admit, it's a pretty cool looking game. Now, I've never been super into the Oddworld games. I haven't played many of them. I've just touched on them here and there. They are platformers with a cool little aesthetic to them. But of course, following The Legend of a Slave, very good looking cinematics within the trailer itself. But you do get little glimpses of gameplay like right here. And I must admit, I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing. It has a very cool atmosphere, like I said. The aesthetic of the game is very industrial. I like it. I can dig it. I can get behind it. So hopefully we will see more about this at this year's E3. Of course, that's pretty much when companies reveal the news. But the environments look phenomenal. The crafting mechanic I'm very curious about. How will that work? Are there weapons you can use, as we just saw some kind of grenade fire being thrown? Is that something that you're going to be able to do? Of course, you see people gathering, or you see Abe gathering, you know, various kinds of materials to construct things. So hopefully it will be a bit of a complex platformer, if you will, and I would love to see what is going on here. Of course, again, the game revealed back in 2016, so it's gotten some time in development, and it could be a pretty big deal going forward. Of course, I'm a big fan of the platformers, without a doubt, but how about that Gears 5? Because it's obviously coming out pretty soon, it's got to. But we now have an idea of when that very well could be, and it's actually relatively soon. And we also got the box art thanks to a little bit of a leak. We might be getting Gears 5 sooner than expected this year. For a brief period of time, the Taiwanese Gamers Ratings Board website has an updated listing of Gears 5 that showed the game's box art. The box art has since been changed to a more generic one with a black background and a white logo. The original version, spotted by Generacion Xbox, Spanish, prominently featured Kate Diaz, whom we have known for a while, is going to be Gears 5's main protagonist. More interestingly, that cover also shows the Locust Queen Mira, who was killed. She was killed at the end of Gears of War 3. Now's not the time for fear. More interestingly, the cover also shows the Locust Queen Mira, who was killed at the end of Gears of War 3. The ending to Gears 4 suggested that there is a connection between Kate and Mira, and the former certainly has a Locust pendant to prove it. This, judging from Gears 5's only trailer, will be the driving force behind the main events of the game. And so, folks, there we have it. The official, I guess, unofficial box art for Gears of War 5. It looks pretty good, I must admit. Strange box art for Gears 5. I expect more flame and fire, but I suppose if you're going for an icy look, it definitely switches things up, and it very well could be a pretty good-looking box art in and of itself. Now is where things get interesting. The listing does not mention a release date, but Generacion Xbox suggests it will be out on September the 10th. Google's auto-translation is rough, so it's hard to say where that info comes from, though it is likely the same source who tipped the site off to the listing. Microsoft previously confirmed Gears 5 would be out this year, and September seems plausible, but we won't know for sure until it is official. And of course, again, we have E3 next month, we have an Xbox conference, and that is where you will be getting that news. In fact, in my past experiences with watching E3 conferences, Gears 5 tends to, or not even Gears 5, the Gears franchise tends to either headline or conclude. It seems to be one of the big games that gets people hyped up. And so hopefully that's where we'll see it. It could open the show, it could end the show, it could be intermingled somewhere in between. But what you do need to know is it will be there. We will get a trailer and gameplay and a release date, and it's going to be a good time. But again, not just coming to Xbox, also coming to PC as well, because of that whole Xbox Play Anywhere kind of initiative they have going on over there. I love the Gears franchise, loved Gears of War 4, thought it was really, really good. Cannot wait to see what Gears 5 does bring to the table. But that rounds out today's episode of Caffeinate. Of course, a very thick episode today with a lot of on-the-fly research and math, which I'm also very, very bad at. But if you happen to be new to the show, I do hope you enjoyed what I brought to the table. Of course, you can subscribe for more, and of course, if you are watching live on Twitch, I appreciate you being here, where the show is hosted live 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, if you did want to check it out. But of course, again, on YouTube, on podcast services, I appreciate you guys very much. I will see you guys tomorrow for a brand new episode of Caffeinate. But until then, have a phenomenal day, and peace.